All right. So as we said, mic check successful, and I'm here, so that mic check is good too. I'm going to get started. I've got just a few things to talk about. We've had a bunch of development work going on. I know it's been slower than I'm learning to be more careful about how I give my estimates on things because I have a tendency to unearth surprises when I'm in here digging around in the code. So this current phase of the development that I've been doing took longer than I anticipated. And I think part of that was because I learned a lot about where the state of the code is in various spots. And I think hopefully fit what I did do into the code in a way that makes the most sense. But we've got a couple things that are coming up. So I'll first address how I'm going to roll this out. I've already updated the grid servers. They've been running for a couple of days on the new code. That's all looking good. I can say with that when a new avatar comes in, they no longer just get dumped in the middle of the region. They get put at the landing spot in the front now. If you were to log in and your region was offline, you'd be sent there as well, so that's all working. Little things like that, kind of just little tweaks that I got implemented and fixed up with the grid code are all set. There's some performance improvements in the user server code as well that are kind of hand in hand with the changes I did for the website, and that's been the bulk of the development. That and currency. The website development necessitated some changes to some of the tables. So there's a fair amount of database work that's in this release. Some of it is not compatible with the current grid. So in order for me to roll this out, I'm going to have to actually take the grid down for probably about an hour. I would like to do that this evening. There's some data table migrations that have to be applied. Basically what it does is it gets the identity part of the grid code upgraded quite a bit. So I've added a bunch of features that tie into the website that allow you to support like third-party authentication. Like you can, in some websites, I don't know if you've seen it, you can use another website you already have an existing account with to authenticate. That doesn't work in the viewer right now, and actually something I'm going to follow up on. But the other thing that does work is two-factor authentication. And again, the viewer won't know how to do that, but when you log into the website, you can take advantage of it. So the code that I'm rolling out will support 3 main activities. There's basically a new dashboard that is available on the web, which is going to be the standard place you'll land when you come in to do grid-related stuff. And you can log in through that. Once you log in, you can change your password. That will work. So it will all be able to change from the generated passwords that I produced when we all got started to a password that you're comfortable with. You can also at that time actually adopt two-factor authentication. I would suggest the best way to do this, the first time you do it, just change your password and don't add the authenticator. Then go back and do that as a second step. The main reason is that right now the grid and the date and the web are syncing themselves, but they're not sharing the same authentication code. So the changing the password allows the two things to be in sync, so that you use the same password to log into the website as you do the grid. In the near future, I will extend that so they literally use the same authentication database and things like that. So but that's a second step. And the one thing I did want to mention is that we have a third system that you sometimes interact with. That's the support system that is not yet integrated into this authentication mechanism. I would eventually like to address that, so they all share common authentication. But that's obviously a lower priority. We can kind of get by with things as they are while I address some other more important features. Okay, so you'll be able to change your password. You'll be able to log in. There's some basic information you can maintain right now related to your profile. That's going to be expanding quite a bit. Yes, so when you log in, you'll be able to log in using either an email address or an account name. An account name is first name dot last name, all lowercase. The best way to do it is to use your email address because that's tied to your account already. That's why we actually asked for people to give me a valid email when we set up the accounts. So you'll be able to log in with that. And we'll provide, I'll obviously help as this rolls out if people have any difficulty. The other thing that will work will be registration. So for new accounts coming in, basically you'll be allowed to register an account. You specify a couple of basic information. I don't yet have avatar, the avatar picker working. I wanted to get this up and running and out so people can start to do this as it is now. That's an addition that's coming as well. So as soon as I'm able, I'll add the ability to select a default avatar, and you'll get initialized with that appearance when you come in. I'll also make it possible for avatars who, existing avatars can pick one of those appearances, and we'll add those things to your inventory. So you'll be able to get the default avatars populated even if you've already got an account. So like I said, registration will work. When you register, the account gets created, and you're going to be set up so that you come into the welcome area at the front of the welcome area, our normal landing point there. So it's pretty basic functionality for their website, but what it is foundational, because I've got a dashboard now where I can hang functionality and a bunch of things that are coming real soon behind this. I wanted to get the basic things that we've been talking about out there first, and then allow people to go from there. So one of those things that's coming real soon now is buying currency, because the other major feature that is in this release is the token-based currency support. It is actually functional on the grid now. There's no way to get currency other than, frankly, me giving you some. And I did do some experiments and testing with a few people where we set up and tried vendors and handing currency around and stuff like that. So we've verified that the basic currency operations are working. Some of the viewers are problematic in that if you get given currency, you don't automatically see the screen update. That's a viewer issue. Well, it's a grid issue with the viewer. All you have to do is click the dollar balance at the top and it will update. The other thing that doesn't happen is that while I'm setting the prefix for currency to SB for Skybooks, it doesn't currently get updated in the viewers. That's also a viewer change, or it's a grid change that there's an additional capability that needs to be enabled so that it can push the currency symbol when that's activated. That's definitely something I'm going to fix, because my goal is eventually to support, as we've talked about, multiple currencies, specifically the Globit currency. And you need a way to be able to tell what dollar balance you're looking at when you're in a region. But that's the other major change with the rollout that I'm talking about adding. So that's functional now. So as once I get the regions updated and the database changes done tonight and tomorrow, I'll go back and finish turning on the extra option in the web page to buy currency. So you'll have a PayPal option to buy currency. We're going to use the 250 Skybucks to $1, which matches Globits and SL fairly closely. So people don't have to do a lot of switching with pricing. The pricing should be fairly uniform. And as a reminder, you cannot cash out Skybucks. What you can do is use them for services on the grid. So paying for services, there aren't a lot of those, but there are a few, and paying your tier. That actually gets to another enhancement that I'd like to do. Right now, the billing all comes from PayPal, which I'm going to continue to do, but there's no way to kind of really see what your balance is and how you apply these Skybucks to it. It's going to be kind of a manual process. And I don't like manual processes because that usually means more work for me and for Callie. So I'd like to eventually have a way for you to preview the regions that you own and the bill or the billing amount that's associated with those things, and be able to apply money from your Skybucks account directly to those balances so that they're reflected there. So that's going to take a bit more work. I'll also add support when I add the region list to support grid restarts or region restarts from the website. So lots of stuff in the works, but also kind of some foundational stuff that's getting delivered. The other thing I wanted to talk about was in the process of doing all this work, and especially the currency work, it became very obvious that the code that's in Halcyon is running a very old interface definition for currency. So I made some quick and dirty attempts to try and get Globits working, and there's just missing functions and underlying support for some of the things that the module wants to do. Those are all things that can be fixed. They're just going to take time. And going back to what I said about being honest and realistic about my ability, time and ability, we're probably talking a couple more weeks before I can get the Globits pieces nailed down and that delivered as well. And I realize, and that this to me, I know that the token-based currency is sort of a placeholder for what we really want, which is a currency where you can cash out. We have a number of really good content creators who want the ability to pull cash out of the grid, and I want to be able to support that. We also have some high-profile content creators in the wings that are really waiting for that to be in place before they'll engage with us, and I want that also. So I am going to continue to work on it, but I just want to be honest about the amount of effort that's required. There's a fair amount of work to update to the current interface for money in the grid, and to add those hooks back into the rest of the system so that things update correctly and so on. I've also got some other things in mind with the 26 item fix. That one bothers me daily, mainly because I try and build like many of you, and I have frustrating time with it because of that. So there's a few other things I'm going to try and focus on, but the big thing will be enabling commerce, because I think that's the thing that people care the most about. If you think there's something else, I'd like to hear about it. But that's my assumption. So in terms of timeframes, like I said, I will post a message in our announcements. I'll take the grid down for a short period of time late tonight to do this database update. The grid servers are already updated. The website will get deployed, and I'll start region restarts on all the regions on the grid, as they need to be updated as well. Hopefully, if everything goes smoothly, you'll come back tomorrow to a shiny, updated grid that has currency support, and we'll start to do some things to get a little bit of that out there so people can test and work with it. And as soon as I possibly can, I'll get that website interface turned up with the PayPal interface. The nice part about the way I did the website is I can update it independently from the grid for the most part once this first piece of work is done. So I'll be able to roll out updates and enhancements to the website separate from a major grid update. And I intend to be fairly aggressive about doing that so that you can see progress in those kinds of areas as well. What else? There's one other thing I wanted to talk about. There was, I know I said, I kind of presented some of this work about a week ago, a little more than a week ago, and said I was going to do it last weekend, and that was my intention. And the thing that held me back was an illness that actually was, I got my COVID booster shot, and it kind of knocked me on my ass for a while. But in the process of doing that, there was a couple of comments or questions about my health, and so I wanted to address that because I think I believe I have a right to some privacy, but I also think that you're all dependent on me to deliver this stuff, and so it isn't a bad thing necessarily to talk a little bit about where I'm at. I'm not an old guy, but I'm not a young guy either. I'm not yet retired, so I still work a full-time job. But retirement is something I'm starting to think about. So it gives you an idea of how old I might be. I do have a health condition that sometimes causes me some difficulty. It's very treatable and manageable, and if I take the meds and I'm good about it, there's no issue, and I'll lead a nice, healthy, long life. But it does have a tendency to make me tired, and I'm a little bit immune compromised, and so the shot, in particular, the vaccination kind of hit me pretty hard. So overall, I think my health is good. We do okay. Callie chases me around the house, and that keeps me moving. And I still have the energy to do a full day's work and then still come home and do some extra stuff on the grid. And my goal longer term, and when I say long term, I'm thinking 7, 10 plus years out. So it gives you an idea how much I'm committed to seeing this through and making it work, is to really have this grid be something that I can retire into. So I still have a job and something I'm still actively doing and working on and making improvements on. So we're going to be here for a long time if I can help it, because if I didn't have something like that to work on, I'd get bored. So anyway, that's probably enough about my health. I just wanted to touch on it because it came up in some conversations. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but I think that's the main thing I wanted to touch on. So if there are any questions, this is a good time to jump in. Like I said, like Callie said, follow the protocol. If you can, raise your hand and we'll recognize you. You can either type your question or jump up into the presenter area, and we'll let you, and you can address it vocally. Yeah, that's a great question, Tam. I'm still working on the ORs and IARs. My goal is for that to work smoothly enough that we can pretty much move content around, specifically between the Utopia Skye-Grid and Skye-Grid, but other grids as well. So it's very important to me because it represents a mechanism for content to come across and for it to be done in a way that we don't lose data, specifically the materials and some of the things that don't come across correctly. So I am still working on them. It's still a priority, but in my opinion, it's a lower priority than a working grid currency that can be cashed out. So, I would like to hear feedback on that. If people think differently, if you really believe that the ORs and IAR stuff is a higher priority, then I'll take a look at that and and kind of rework my plans. But I think that I feel like because of wanting to get some of the real content creators and hold some of the content creators we have, that cashable, cash outable currency is a big thing. And so that's where I'm going to primarily put my focus. But yes, the ORs and IARs are definitely right behind them. By the way, we do have an event coming up, or an opportunity for an event. We'll see what happens with it. I don't want to jump the gun, but Valentine's Day is a good day to actually kind of plan something. So, okay, yeah, Loki, I understand. Again, I do want to make it a priority. The ORs are important. I absolutely agree with that. People want to get their content in. And I will work with, if somebody comes on board and buys a region, I will work with you to get an OR loaded. I don't want to do a lot of ORs because of the issues that come along with that. But if somebody is taking on a region, I will certainly work with you to get an OR loaded. Although, like I said, we still have the issues with materials not coming across correctly, and some of the mesh settings are incorrect, things like that. If it's not a Halcyon OR, if it is, then that's not a problem, and then it isn't as big a deal. So I'll work with people on a case-by-case basis if I can. If that's something that's really important to getting a resident comfortable and settled. I want to get the currency first, though, before I make major changes to the OR and then reopen the ability to do that in a general bit. Yeah, so if it's an inworlds OR, a Halcyon OR should come across without any too much trouble. Well, that's not necessarily true either. There are issues, some of the Halcyon ORs, with nesting. So if things that are multiple levels deep inside objects don't necessarily get their permissions and ownership set correctly with the current code. So, and that's true of any Halcyon grid. There's lots of little tricks to get around it, but it definitely takes some individual attention to make it happen. So I will say that I understand that it's important. Having your data is important, and I will. If you're moving forward with the region on the grid, I will make it a priority to work with you to get that stuff done. You're free to jump into the speaker role if you want to speak.
All right. No, there's actually a button you have to click in order to accept it, unfortunately.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. There you are.
Oh, I found it. Okay. So you talked about currency in a broad sense, and you said you would implement currency that we could purchase so that we could buy goods and services on the grid side. You spoke also about Globits as an alternative currency. And I'm not sure if Globits are meant to be the way that creators cash out, since we can only use that in-grid currency for things like tier and new regions and moving regions and renaming regions and whatever. As for services, the question I have is this: Globits has run into a lot of trouble lately. Sometimes they're down for weeks, months at a time, and if the Globits aren't available, is there an alternative that you have on a back burner that you could anticipate to put into practice so that there wouldn't be an interruption of the service that we're used to? Now, I know you're not responsible for how Globits does its business, but if we get to the point we can't cash out, how do we work around that?
Yeah, it's a great question. There aren't a lot of other options, unfortunately, with currency. The other one, Podex, that people might be familiar with, really isn't taking on additional people, and there's issues with the way that's implemented. So the Globits currency is probably the best option. But as Art said, it's had some reliability issues. Thankfully, for the last couple of months, it's been okay again. But we were actually offline for probably almost 45 days at one point, without a lot of updates and information, which is fairly frustrating if this is a way that you're trying to at least make a living or cover your hobby or do something like that. So yeah, I'm always looking for options, and one of the things that I've thought about is using a payment processor like PayPal or Stripe or something like that, and batching up transactions so that the fees aren't quite as onerous as they are. That's a lot more work, but it's actually not that far off from the changes that have to happen to get the other things to work. So I actually already have a money server working with the grid code. And what that means is that there's a server that is part of the grid servers that handles all the monetary transactions. It's capable of supporting multiple types of currency at a time. The current code in Halcyon is not, which is why we're just going to do the token-based thing for now until I can get this cut over. But once this new interface is fully implemented into the grid, I could theoretically run multiple currencies. Globits would be the first one I would do. But yeah, that gives us some options to look at some alternatives. And I really would like to be able to explore that with all of you via a dialogue, because everything is a trade-off. There's fees, there's transaction fees for PayPal transaction fees. They're fine if you're selling something for a couple of dollars or more, but if for microtransactions, like what we'd be talking about on the grid in some cases, tipping and things like that, it really doesn't lend itself well to that. So I'm going to keep looking at alternatives, and if we can come up with something where I can come up with a scheme where I can batch up transactions and send them through as a group to minimize the impact of the fees, I'll take a look at that. And we'll see if we can't get something like that as an alternative. It would be really nice if the Globit service had been rock solid and reliable, and we could just say, oh, this is our solution. But I agree, I don't think we can afford to do that without at least looking around and seeing what else is possible. Hopefully that answered the question. It's a tough problem, and I want to keep working on it because I know that for many of the merchants, this is something you care about, because it's partly why you're here. You want to be able to make creations and also, sell them. So. All right, I think Zauberin has the floor. Yeah, that's a great comment / question. No, in your case, Zauberin, no, it won't, because we're creating, we're loading the ore using the same ID that you had when. So that is, for instance, Loki. I asked the question earlier, Loki, I don't think you've created an account yet. We might actually be able to make this a lot easier if we create your account with the same ID that you had in Inworlds. And then the data would load. It would already be loaded as being owned by you. So there would be no issues with that. So yeah, that's a good point. It's not ideal, in my opinion. I ought to be able to create accounts with local IDs that are different and still be able to move data around, but it is kind of a hack, if you will, that I've already taken advantage of at least once. So that is the case. If you use the same Inworlds ID, then the nesting is not an issue. Unfortunately, the other side of the coin is that if you already have an account and a lot of stuff created under it, it's very difficult to move it across from that old ID to a new one. So it's not simply a matter of going in and changing your ID in the database. All the inventory objects are attached to to the current one and so on. So this is kind of a snarly problem. It needs to get fixed, but like I said, I just want to focus on the currency piece first. Look, if you get to creating the account, and I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes, that's correct, Zauber. Yeah, if you loaded it and then rewrote it from sim on a stick, yes, that's likely to be a problem. I think we'll just have to look at it together and figure out what makes the most sense. But if it is still essentially with the in-world XOR, then if we can reuse your account ID, it might make it a little much easier. And I'm happy to work with you. If you're interested in getting a region and moving the account, I'm happy to work with you to see what makes the most sense. The sim on a stick thing has some other issues too. If you use the default account that came with it, that creates other issues. Data integrity and OpenSim aren't necessarily something that go hand in hand. Yeah, so if you have the original OR, we'll see. Like I said, I'll see what makes the most sense. We can work with either the original one or what you generated, and then work out what's the best way to get the data loaded. But because again, if you're setting up an account and getting a region, I'm happy to make this a priority and see if we can't get this taken care of. I want to say that I appreciate everybody's patience with this whole process. It's I've been running Skye-Grid for 3-4 years, but coming up on, is it 3 or 4 years? It's been a while. Utopia Skye-Grid, and it's obviously still there. And I know the process I went through getting that to a point where it was stable the way I wanted it to be. The Halcyon code's not unlike that. It's a little different in the sense that it really it stagnated for a couple of years with really nobody picking it up and working on it. And so we're behind our time, if you will, on some things. And it's really a shame because there are some things about Halcyon that many of you like Flux and PhysX and things like that are really very compelling. So I find myself sometimes wishing I could just mash the two together and have the best of both worlds. Because things like Globits and Kitely purchases and all that stuff would just work, and we can still do a closed grid with it. But I do understand that the other features like Flux and PhysX and the mesh work that I did and all that kind of stuff are also important. So it just means that this process is going to take longer than I would like it to take. It feels like it ought to be easy, but it's not. There's just a lot of work to do, and I'm frankly the only one doing it. So I'm just going to keep chugging, and I'll do my best. But I want to say that I appreciate your patience. All right, I don't see any other speakers. I'm going to turn this over to Callie and see if she has any remarks she'd like to make. And I'll thank you for your attention, and happy to answer any questions if you have any offline after this.
Thanks, honey. I think it's important. Mike and I talk a lot about this, about the Halcyon grid and all the work that has to go into it. And I have to admit, the knowledge required to maintain, manage, and progress this is way beyond me. So I really just try and leave Mike alone to do his thing. But I think it's important to have the right perspective with this. For someone like me who doesn't do code like Mike, okay, you come into a grid and you really kind of think about why you're there. Are you a creator? Are you an artist? Are you just somebody, looking to hang out with your friends? Or, whatever way you find to a grid, the thing to remember about Skye-Grid is what you're really coming to here is a foundational investment. You're investing in the future of something to be better than its, current state. And there really is no other Halcyon grid out there that's doing this. I don't know of all the grids out there. I only know of a few that I hear about. And I also don't keep up on the other grids because that's just not why I'm here. You know what I mean? But I can tell you that from our perspective, this is something that will wind up being better than its origination. And so to me, that becomes the investment. And it's not just an investment in money as you guys are paying for tier, but it becomes an investment in progress and a level of trust in us that we will continue to work on that investment with you because we're really partners in all of this. So I think that might help make it a little bit easier to kind of understand the length of time it might take, you know, whereas I just want something to work. I mean, I'm guilty of it, you know. It takes a little bit longer. The big magic button doesn't always work. It's got to be built. And so I really appreciate that investment in the future of this grid and the future of the code and, becoming something that, we aren't today, but will be going forward. So I think that's a really cool thing to be partnered with you folks on. But that's just my take on it. I just wanted to kind of say that I'd kind of come to that, um, thought process. But I do want to mention too, anybody that's on the grid. I mean, the grid is currently working. Our uptime is, uh, well, pretty much 100%. I mean, I think our biggest problem is that we really probably need to make a more routine showing of like restarting, the waterways and things like that because they're up so much that we just have to kind of restart them once in a while, like like a Windows machine does. So that's something we can kind of need to make a process around. But we have loads of places, beautiful spaces, and some incredibly talented creators on this grid. And so I would encourage people to create events. Let's get some parties going. And now that the website's coming and people can start to register directly, people can come in, they can DJ and things like that. And the currency, we're working on it, but there's no reason we can't just have a good time together. So with that in mind, I wanted to bring up the most current event. Tanya Matahari is putting on a Valentine's Day event next Sunday. I believe it's from 11 to 3. 11 to 3. Yes, 11 to 3 grid time. And we're not sure of the entertainment just yet. I have a feeling either Mike or myself, or maybe both of us, will be DJing. I know that I think Tanya's still working on some other um, entertainment as well. And there have been some incredible offers from people like Tanya and Rosa. I'm not sure of who else. I apologize. I didn't keep track of it all. But I would make the same, statement. We have the benefit of this other grid, USG, which is not, SG and doesn't try to be. But we have creators over there like Tanya and others who have offered that if you have an avatar in USG and you purchase a product in USG, they will give you that same product for free in SG. So I might encourage you to, you know, take a chance on that in the interim while we get things going. You know what I mean? Because it's just as safe and secure there. The difference is it's not halcyon. And you also have the benefit currently of the Kitely Marketplace. So for things like this, you might get something from Tanya there and be able to use it here and have all the events and such that we want to have here in the fashion we're all used to. So I would encourage that. But do mark your calendars. Next week, Sunday, is the 13th from 11 to 3 grid time. And we'll be having it at the Skye Botanical Garden Ballroom venue. And to get there, there's a box of landmarks on welcome by the Tourism Bureau that contains all the official landmarks, including Skye Botanical Gardens. So make sure you pick up that box of landmarks. And if I catch you online, I'll also pass it to you as well. But we'd love to see you all there. So, oh, and Zobrin has a question. So I'm going to mute and let Zobrin do her thing.
All right. This is just another quick question. I was wondering if, Mike, if I was wondering if you were going to be resuming the old work in Halcyon with getting it ported and working on Linux.
Yeah, so I feel like I've got a workable solution now with Windows pieces. I'm running those everything in a container, which is kind of nice for management and support. So I've got that can exist and continue for however long is needed. But I would love to revisit some of that stuff. Ideally, I'd like to revisit the Linux support at the and upgrade PhysX at the same time. I'm not sure I'm the best person to do that work, but if it came down to it for Halcyon to be able to get an upgrade, I would certainly look at it. I would say that that's probably midterm plans, like looking 6 months or a year out. We'll come back around and take a hard look and say, hey, how hard is this to do? But it's definitely a goal in the long term. I would like to have everything running on Linux if I can. It takes a cost element out of the picture because I have to pay for licenses for Windows servers now in order to run the regions. And like I said, that's all in hand and working, but it would just give me another option that is potentially more cost effective.
All right.
Yep. And just to be clear, the big issue with that is PhysX. That's the thing that traditionally requires Windows.
Yep.
And like I said, the way around that would probably be looking at an upgrade of the version of PhysX that's running, because the newer versions are natively supported on Linux.
Okay. That'll be all for me.
Yep. I see Ballpeen has his hand up. I was kind of hoping you might comment on that, because I know you have a lot more experience, certainly with the physics.
Valpina, I've gone ahead and send the invite, so probably at the top of your screen, you might see that invite to speak.
Thank you. I just saw it, and hopefully you can hear me now. Yep. Oh, PhysX! I live and breathe PhysX, and I sorely miss it. I looked into what it takes to do two things. One, implement PhysX on OpenSim, and then looked at the differences between PhysX 2 point whatever it is that's running on Halcyon and PhysX 5. It's a lot of work. The middleware has changed a lot, and so there's a lot of coding that has to happen there. I estimated, looking at what needed to happen, that it would take about 6 months to a year to get it done, and it's a lot of work. Yeah. But I really want it to happen. I mean, I really miss both the accuracy of PhysX. Every time I try to do some very simple physics things on UBODE, I just cringe when it falls apart. And I'd like to get that back. I'd like to also get my vehicle system, which I wrote for InWorlds, which is in Halcyon, moved over to OpenSim, where I tend to hang out too. But the point is that if I work on PhysX, which I'm planning to do at some point, I would make it work for OpenSim and then make sure that it would, backport to Halcyon.
Right.
It probably wouldn't be that hard to do. At that point, Mike and I would then confer and, figure out how to get all that to work, get it all to happen. But that's it. It's not an easy thing. It's just so don't have expectations of seeing that in a month or two. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
There's been a few times I've sat around and said, hey, how hard would it be to take the things that people think well of Halcyon and move them to OpenSim. PhysX is one, Flox is another, and the Flox code is another big project. It would be great from an OpenSim perspective to have that, but it's probably another 6-month effort. And that's been the problem with kind of. I actually like Halcyon. I like the cleanliness of the code, the fact that there isn't tons of hypergrid stuff scattered all through everything. So in some ways, I'm very, very much committed to the current direction. But so it's really kind of looking at 2 big efforts versus a lot of small incremental changes. And frankly, the incremental changes are probably more manageable. So that means that I'm committed to the current direction. But USG is still there, and as Callie counts there, if only because you could potentially access some of the merchants that are in both places, and many of them are offering arrangements where they'll honor that purchase in both places. So, and you'd be welcome for sure in both. So. All right. I don't have any other comments, and I don't. Callie, if you don't have anything, I think we're done.
I think Cheerio has some comments though.
Yeah, she's.
Cheerio is one of our 2 cats, and I think she might have something to say in the background there.
She's decided that she wants pets right now.
Okay.
She's an older kitty. She's 17 years old. When she wants attention, she
pretty much gets attention. No, that was the only thing I wanted to bring up, was the event coming up, and to, encourage people to feel like they can create events. If you want to create an event, by the way, and you're not sure, if you'd like to use one of the official regions or whatever, just get in touch with me, and I will work with you. And we'll see what we can do. Get some people having some fun. That's it for me, though. So.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Like I said, we'll have a short. The grid will probably be down about an hour tonight, late tonight. But tomorrow, hopefully, if everything goes smoothly, it'll be up and running and shiny and new with a website. So thank you so much. Thanks for attending.
Yeah, have a great rest of your weekend, whatever is left of it for you.
Yep.
Take care.